What's up guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Last night I was finally able to beat the new nightmare dungeon on challenge mode with my friends Blaine, Liam, and Jax. And it was definitely a struggle, but it was also a lot of fun in the end. KingsIsle definitely took a lot of work with putting together new mechanics for this dungeon, and there's a lot of aspects to it that I have never seen before, and that's what makes it really cool but also frustrating at times. So I figured that I would upload the video of us beating this dungeon with some tips and tricks here and there. I am going to try my hardest to make a simple guide for this dungeon, so work with me here. So to start off with this dungeon, you are going to be greeted by this broken dream orb that essentially is an intro to what is to come later on, so definitely get comfortable with him and how he works. But they are essentially these big wisps that try to suck you up and send you back to the beginning of the dungeon. So you are going to try and avoid this one by running around the side and getting into the barrel, or just running straight through it when it passes by you. After you pass the broken dream, you are going to split up into two groups, and two of you are going to stand on the right side in front of the idols, and two of you are going to stand on the left side in front of the idols, and you are all going to press X on the idols at the same time. You'll see a little timer at the bottom, and that will then lead you into the next area where you will take a portal and be taken into your solo fights. Now, for your solo fight, you are going to want to set up a Rochambeau, as this is the quickest way to kill the minion. But if you are not comfortable with gambits, then you are able to essentially just aura bubble and send a big hit, and then a backup hit after, which is what I did in my fight here. I'm a storm wizard, so I would usually set up an Oni, but in cases where I am not able to weakness, then you are going to aura and bubble, and then send a big hit, which in my case was Storm Owl, and then follow up with a smaller hit, which in my case is Storm Shark. After your fight is done, if you took a lot of damage, you are going to be able to run back through your portal to the beginning of the dungeon to pick up some health wisps. But be wary of your friends' healths as well, and make sure not to take all of the wisps. There's not a lot of them, so just be wary of that. And after everyone's fight is done, there is going to be another idol that spawns where your fight was, and you are all going to simultaneously click this idol to be taken to the next part of the dungeon. Just make sure you click the idol at the same time as all of your friends, and don't just click it as soon as your fight is done. Make sure to wait for your friends. Now, this next part of the dungeon is what I like to call the maze runner part. When you first get into the maze, you are going to see this device that says token required. Make sure to keep a note of what token you are looking for, as you are going to get the token after the next fight, and you're going to have to run back here to input it. So for this next part, you are going to have to get to the two side fights. One on the left side that is a dragon, and one on the right side that is a croc. And this fight is going to be a 2v2. For this video, I was on the right hand side defeating the croc with Jax, who is a balanced wizard. The best strat for these fights is to really have one person supporting and one person who is going to hit. That way the hitter is going to focus on setting up a gambit, but the support person is going to have to counter the hanging effects that these fights do. You have to make sure to have a lot of counters for these fights, because if you kill him when the counter is up, he's just going to respawn. So make sure that your support person has counters for a lot of hanging effects. Now, before you even get to these fights, you're going to have to be careful in this maze, because there are a bunch of broken dream wisps floating around trying to get you. Not only are there some roaming the hallways, but there is also a wisp in each quadrant that knows your location and is after you at all times. So be very cautious. There were several times when I thought I was in the clear, but then one snuck up on me. Make sure to use the barrels to your advantage, but do be wary that if you are not in America, it can be a little bit glitchy. Like Liam is in Canada, for example, and his ping is really bad. So the location of the wisps are not actually the real location on the servers. So just be wary of that. I know it can be frustrating, but you will get it down. Now, I am going to say that the strat for these two side bosses is really annoying, because if you are not comfortable with counters, then you are definitely going to struggle in these fights. I was lucky that I was a hitter and did not have to worry about pulling counters too much, but if you are the support person, just make sure that you know your counters and you know how to deck cycle really well. I know that these fights are frustrating. We were getting frustrated in our fights too, and that's what's really annoying about this dungeon, and the fact that it came out with challenges challenge mode first is that you have to be comfortable with PvP or raids, and if you are not, then you are definitely going to struggle. If you are looking for a group to do this dungeon with, or just help in general, join my Discord server. I will have it linked down below, and I will try to help you guys out to the best of my ability. But after you have done the dungeon a couple times though, you will get used to how these fights work and get into the rhythm of doing things. Don't make the mistake that we did with trying to run a full deck. Make sure that you have the cards that you need so that you are not trying to find counters or hits at the last second. You are going to need about 6 to 10 buffs depending on what strat you are using, and the easiest way to do this fight is to hit the same turn that you counter on, so that way the boss can't keep stacking more effects on. The quicker you are able to do this fight, the better. Me and Jax got ourselves into situations sometimes because we were simply not killing quick enough, and he was just stacking up effects that Jax was not able to counter. In my opinion, the fights in this dungeon are definitely the easier parts, and in my experience, running around and trying to figure out the maze is definitely more challenging. So if you are able to get these two side fights out of the way, then you are on a good track. I will say that these fights are more forgiving than the fights in the raid, for example. There were some times where I messed up my hits, but we were still able to defeat the boss in the end because we were just able to set up another hit after. So don't worry if things go terribly wrong the first time that you hit in this fight, as these fights are more forgiving than some. I really hope that when standard mode is released, these fights are more understanding and more accessible for more people. I know I said it before, but I understand that this dungeon is frustrating. We were definitely getting frustrated as well, but if you study your counters, then that will definitely help you out a bunch. So, now that you have defeated your side boss, things are going to get a little bit tricky. So remember how I told you in the beginning that you have to remember what token you were getting? Well, this is where you get the token. One of you is going to get a school symbol, and one of you is going to get an astral symbol. The token for the school symbol is going to be the second school that the boss was. In our case, this was a balance and ice boss. So ice is going to be the school symbol that Jax had to go and put into his token box at the beginning of the maze. Now, my token was revealed at the end, and it was a moon token. So I have to collect that token and take it back to the beginning of the maze where I started. I need to input that token into the box while Jax does the same thing. And once those tokens are in the box, one of us has to run back to where there is a big dream water pump at the back and activate the pump. So you have to defeat the boss, go input your token, go back through the maze to where the boss was, and turn on the water pipe. Now, after you have the pipe turned on that activates all of the smaller pipes throughout the maze, the next part of this dungeon is going to be collecting dream water to bring into the middle of the fight to be able to activate the final boss Malice. Now, all 4 of you are going to have to collect dream water, and I think that it's been worked out that there are going to be 3 pumps in your quadrant that have dream water. Some runs you might only have 2 pumps that have dream water, and some runs you might have more, but normally you have about 3 pumps. Now, they made this even more challenging because all of the pumps look like there is dream water coming out, but in reality only some have a big puddle in front of it where you can actually collect dream water. So not only do you have to find the pumps, but you have to find the correct pumps that actually have dream water coming out of it. I will say in my personal experience that this is the most frustrating part of this dungeon because the broken dream wisps are so tough to run away from, especially if you have the tracker wisp that knows your location and is just following you around the map. It's definitely really frustrating at times. And not only that, but the more that you get hit by the broken dream wisps, the more aggro they become. So you really have to try and avoid the wisps, not only for yourself and losing health, but also for your team so that they don't have to deal with these super aggravated wisps. This part of the dungeon definitely had me wanting to quit the most, and I had the easiest section. I believe that the purple portal that you go through at the beginning is the easiest, and the green portal that Jax had to go through is definitely more challenging. So if you are just starting out, I would highly recommend starting out with the purple portal because your quadrant will be the easiest for finding dream water in the maze. But it is still a challenge, don't get me wrong. I was definitely raging just as much as the next person was. I will say a big tip if you are getting lost in the maze a lot is to look up at the beacons in the sky. They are located where your side boss was, and there's a white beacon. So if you look up in the sky, you should be able to find at least where the side boss was and have the general direction of where you are trying to run towards. So if you are having a super hard time in the maze, try looking out out for those beacons to help you get back to the center. And if you are really struggling and just need to reset, just run into one of the wisps and obviously you will get sent back to the beginning of the dungeon where you just have to go through your portal again and make it back to where you were. You can see me running around the maze here, struggling to find my way around because you are going to have to check all of the pumps in your quadrant to make sure that you are not missing any dream water. And the part that I find even more annoying is that you cannot have more than one cup, I guess, of dream water at a time. So as soon as you get water from a pump, you have to immediately take it back to the middle and then go back out looking for more dream water. So it's really frustrating if you have two pumps right next to each other and you can see that both of them have dream water in them, but you are not able to get them at the same time. You have to run all the way back to the middle and then all the way back to where the other pump was, and there's just so much room for error in that. I really hope that they take that out in standard mode because it is really frustrating. And sometimes you just get spawn camped, or they grab you to the walls, or they sneak up behind you, and there's really not much that you can do other than just reset the dungeon and try again. So good luck to you guys trying this dungeon. I really hope that you have an easier time with the wisps than I did. So now you and all of your friends have gotten all of your dream water and brought it back to the middle of the map to start the malice fight. I would highly recommend getting a healing and a mana cantrip so that you guys have enough health to do the fight. You don't have to have max health. I do recommend that you have at least 7k though, just to be safe. You can either send cantrips into this fight if you have them. I believe we sent Restoring Rain 3 into this fight, but it's definitely not needed, but it does help you out a lot if you do have cantrips on your side. But once you are in the fight, I will say that Malice is not incredibly difficult to defeat. You are essentially going to want to set up a really big hit for the last person. So in that case, it was a Scion, and I set up a big Storm Owl, and have the other two people supporting and hitting as well if need be. But this fight is not anything crazy. It's not like Hun Hao in the raid. It's definitely doable. I believe you want to start the fight with around 8 minutes on the clock just to be safe, but you are really just going to want to set up some really big hits to be able to kill this guy. I believe that you need at least 10 buffs to kill, so just make sure that you have enough blades or traps in your deck to be able to kill. Luckily, there's only one boss in this fight, and you don't have to kill a bunch of minions alongside him, so if you do get up to this point and you have enough time on the clock, you're almost about to be done with this dungeon, so good job. All in all, I really do like this dungeon. I like that it is a challenge, and I really like the new mechanics that were introduced into this dungeon. I really like the aspect of having to hide in barrels from wisps and go through this huge maze that you have to learn. It's definitely something that I never thought that I would be having to do in Wiz, and I really like that they are adding new aspects that we are having to learn. Now, I do wish in the future that standard mode is released alongside challenge mode, because I know for a lot of people this dungeon is not accessible, and it essentially just feels like another raid. And the Crying Sky raid is difficult enough, and so some people are really frustrated because they are not able to do this dungeon. I will say, if you are just teaming up for this dungeon and you are not in a voice call with your friends, it definitely makes this more challenging. I don't even know if you are able to complete this without communicating properly. And for a game like Wiz, having gambits and Rochambeaus and counters shoved down your throat is really not fun. And I know it's frustrating to a lot of people, myself included. And I'm not someone who does PvP, so having to learn how to set up gambits properly is really frustrating, and I can understand why some people just don't even want to do this dungeon at all while it is still in challenge mode, and some people are just going to wait until standard mode. I feel like that's really disappointing for a lot of people though, because there was a lot of hype around this dungeon coming out, and you see all the streamers doing it, but you are not able to do it yourself, and I understand that it can be really frustrating. And even when you get in there, it's not an easy task, and it's definitely very challenging. So I do hope in the future, if they do release more dungeons like this, that they absolutely release the standard mode alongside the challenge mode so that everyone is able to do it and not just whiz heads. I will say another thing that is really frustrating is to be able to craft your gear, you have to complete this dungeon 25 times in challenge mode as of right now. I'm sure once standard mode comes out that will all change, but as of right now standard mode is not out, so if you want to get the storm robe for example and you are not getting it through drops, you have to complete this dungeon dungeon 25 times, and just completing it once is a lot. So to have to grind out this dungeon 25 times just to get one piece of gear just seems really unfair, especially because we are doing it in challenge mode as is. I really wish that they would change it to like 5 or 10 times at the most. But otherwise, if you have a good group to do this dungeon with, and like I said earlier, if you are looking for a group of people or just want help in general, please join my Discord server. I will have it linked down below, and I will gladly help you guys out when I can. This dungeon can be pretty fun. You just really have to get into the flow of things and learn the maze like the back of your hand, really. Once again, I want to give a big shout out to Blaine, Liam, and Jax for doing this dungeon with me, and also shout out to Almond for not only being the first person to complete this, but also helping us, and Hermix as well. So big thank you to all of you guys. But here we are, finally defeating the Nightmare Dungeon. Yes. Yay. Is he dead? Is he dead? Yeah. What's up?
Oh, I got the storm.
I got the death orb.
Oh, I got the storm.
I'm gonna read the dialogue.
Nice. Let's go, guys.